Welcome to Mysterious Goings On. I am J. Alexander Greenwood, your host. Of course, as always, please call me Alex. That's really a mouthful to call me J. Alexander Greenwood. I ought to tell the story of how I got my pen name sometime. That'd be a good one. But, today we're going to hear some stories from somebody else besides me. I'm going to have a great conversation, I can feel it, with not only is he a great author and somebody who is a very generous person with his support of other authors, but he's a friend. I'm proud to call him my friend, and I'd like to welcome my friend Jason McIntyre to Mysterious Goings On.
Hi, Alex.
How are you?
I am fantastic today.
Yeah? Right.
Yeah.
Well, hey, do me a favor. I won't embarrass you too much by saying how great your writing is, but it is. But could you just give us maybe a quick who you are, maybe a couple of the highlights from what you do?
Well, I've been writing most of my life. I've been self-publishing for close to 6 years now. This most recent year, 2015, and we're now into 16, of course, but 2015, I signed on with Booktrope to release my Dovetail Cove series, which is going to be a set of 10 books in various genres, most of them swimming kind of around the thriller, horror, paranormal world, but all kinds of different things. There's a coming-of-age story in there. There's a Western. There's a noir. I kind of dabble in lots of different things and really enjoy trying new things and finding new readers and hanging out with writers such as yourself and just continuing to learn and continuing to write. That's kind of my MO.
Well, I finished Zed, which I believe is the first in the Booktrope, the Dovetail Cove series published with Booktrope. Is that right? Zed?
That's right. It's the fourth one that's been out, but it's the first with Booktrope. That's absolutely right. Great
book. Really enjoyed it. I'm not going to embarrass you guys. You've read my review, Jason, but it's a great book. And what I love, as being a creator of a world, so to speak, myself, a series, I love what I think you're doing and what you've hinted at what you're doing with Dovetail Cove. From what I can understand, you're kind of going in and out of time. You're going with different characters, and Dovetail Cove is basically what binds it together. Is that oversimplifying it, perhaps?
No, I think you nailed it. I mean, the title itself of the series, if you want to call it a series, even though the books can be read on their own, they can be read in any order, and like I said, they're different genres, but the title of the series is Dovetail Cove, so each book kind of dovetails with each other. There's background characters that swim in and out of focus. Some of those background characters are background characters for 4 books, and then on the 5th or 6th, they have their own story to tell. Some of them have their own story early on and they have their own book, and then they kind of move into the background for a while. So yeah, they dovetail together. The stories absolutely do that, and the setting is what binds them together.
I've done a degree of that myself with my John Pilot mystery series. The first 4 novels are somewhat linear, although there is some flashbacky stuff going on. But my point is they've been fairly linear up until I wrote a book of short stories that focused on everybody except the main character, and I was so pleased by the response critically and sales-wise. I think readers, when they get a hold of a world they like and when they get a hold of a character that they enjoy, they really get excited about when the writer takes you a little bit over to the left or a little bit to the right. Do you think that's so, or are you finding that so?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I would say that one of the greatest things that I've experienced in reading fellow indie authors is the John Pilot books. And one of the reasons, and I'm just going to mention that here, one of the reasons that I like it so much is you don't have to read it front to back. You can read pieces. You can read one novel out of order and everything makes sense. You're getting a complete character. You're getting a complete character arc. And that was one of the things that I liked about Pilot 7 is that I actually read those first before I read any of the novels. And they were great in and of themselves. They were encapsulated. They were complete stories, and you got a full picture. And that's, to be honest, that's what I'm trying to do with Dovetail. And the only reason that there is a Dovetail Cove universe, if we want to call it that, is because the first book that I put out, which was called Shed, which was about these 2 boys living on this unnamed island in this unnamed town, and it became my most well-received book to that point. So I started noodling on the idea, well, that maybe there's more here. And in fact, there is a lot more. And so I kind of went at it with the same approach that I'm thinking that you kind of did with the Pilot 7 short stories, is that these pieces add to the greater picture, but you don't need to have the whole picture. if you don't want, you still get a complete story. So that's kind of the approach that I'm taking there.
Well, thank you for the kind words, by the way. But and that's exactly where we're going is just, I mean, I have it all. It's funny, people, and this is a question I want to put to you, because I get this question. So is it all mapped out? I get that question. Do you know what's going to happen? How many books are there going to be in the pilot series? Do you know how it's going to end exactly? And, sometimes I tease people. I'm like, well, wouldn't you like to know? Or I even say, sometimes it's just so funny, because if you get asked the question enough, you're not trying to be a jerk. You just think it's kind of fun to kind of play with it because you're so excited somebody cares, first of all. So sometimes I've told people, oh yeah, I know how it's going to be. And I've told people there'll be 12 books. Well, 12 is my favorite number, and I think 12 is just kind of a good place. But I don't know that. Heck, I mean, I could see such declining interest in them on my, from the readers or myself, that I'd end it at 6 books or 7 or 8. I don't know.
Right.
And I have no idea. But what I loved about doing with Pilot 7 with the short stories was there's one in particular in there where it's in the future. And it's a character in the series has grown up, more or less, and they're talking about the main character and what probably happened to him. And I had so much fun writing that one, because I just, with blue sky in that thing, I was just sitting there thinking, what could happen to John Pilot in 20 plus years? Where will he be? Will he be this? Will he be that? Will he be happy? Will he be sad? Will he be a recluse? What? And that's kind of what I hinted at in that one. And it was so much fun. But what's great about these short stories is, like you said, they're part of this whole universe. And I was very clear in the forward to the book that maybe some of this may not ever happen, or, but I enjoy doing that so much, and I'm so excited to dig deeper into Dovetail Cove books, and I'm also excited because I'm getting ready to take a trip, and my Kindle gave out. I had one of the second generation, I guess, Kindles, and it totally crapped out on me. It was like it could only hold a charge for about 45 minutes, and so I went ahead and they traded it in and got a deal on a Kindle Paperwhite, which is I've got to tell you, the reading experience is so much better. It is loaded, I tell you, with McIntyre novels. And seriously, you are going to be on my mind on this trip, my friend, because I'll be reading a lot. I've had some of them for a long time and not been able to get to them for various reasons, and I've decided on the heels of Zed, I've got to have more.
Well, 2 things, if I may. I'm excited to know that you might read some more. No, that's 3 things. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2 is, I think that when an author creates a world that resonates with some readers, I think that author can pretty much get away with trying everything. And I think that's probably one of the reasons you may have had some success with the short stories, the Pilot 7 book. And that may have something to do with why each successive Dovetail Cove book has seen more readers, more reviews, and more action just from readers. And third, to your point about not knowing where John Pilot maybe goes, but speculating in some of those short stories that you wrote and thinking about him 20 years down the road, that is so much fun to do that.
Yeah, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Differently than that experience, I actually do know where Dovetail Cove goes. Each book is set in its own year. So each book is actually, it's not called book 1, book 2, book 3. It takes place in the 1970s in Dovetail Cove, and each book is associated with a year. So Bled, the book Bled takes place in 1972. The first book, Shed, takes place in 1977. Dread in 1978. Zed, that I think you mentioned, takes place in 1975. They've kind of come out in different orders than chronological. Some readers love chronological order. Some don't care. As I wrote them out of order, but I actually do. And some people don't believe me. I actually do have the entire decade mapped, and I have 9 of the 10 fully written.
Oh,
so it's a bit different that way.
You have 9 of the 10 fully written?
I do. I'm starting on the 10th, hopefully soon.
I take it back. I don't like you anymore. I hate you. Oh my God. How long can I, let me ask a really amateurish question.
No. I know where you're going, but
how long did it take you to write those?
Well, I wrote Shed. Shed was the first longish thing that I ever wrote, and I wrote that 18 years ago. So this has been stewing for 18 years.
18 years in the making. Yeah. 18 years. If I may, unless I jumped on a point you wanted to make.
No, not at all.
Without getting too personal, you're a Canadian citizen. You live in Canada.
I do.
And from what I understand, where the area you live in, the winters are pretty pretty rough, especially compared to where I live. I'm in Kansas City, Missouri, which is the middle, kind of the middle, near the dead center middle of America. So we're definitely in a different weather pattern than you are. We get our share of cold and heat. But my point is this, are you forced to hole up quite a bit, or is that just an American stereotype of Canadians that, oh my gosh, it's 10 below and there's so much snow you can't get out? Does that inform how you write, or is that just totally like, no, that's how I grew up, it's no different to me than it is living where you do? Maybe you could give me a little insight there of whether that affects how you work.
Sure, I can. Well, for starters, where I live now, you're absolutely right. The winters are very, very cold, probably compared to what you're used to and what many in the United States are used to in the winter. It's longer. The duration is definitely longer. I have, however, lived all across this country. I've lived in the United States. I've lived in different places all over. I visited all over the world.
You lived all over the world. I guess I didn't know you lived in the United States. I didn't know that. Huh.
I did. I lived in Washington State for a period of time.
Okay.
Yeah. There are places in Canada that don't have the drastically cold winters that I have where I am now. But to give you a flavor, and you and I have talked a bit about actual temperatures. We measure in Celsius.
Of course.
So this won't make any sense. The colder that you get below zero, the closer that Fahrenheit and Celsius match up. So one day I think I was telling you how cold it was. It was minus 47 Celsius. And I looked up the conversion, and that converts to about minus 48 or minus 49 Fahrenheit, something like that. Like, it's really close the colder you get.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, which I didn't know either until I looked it up.
Freezing is 32 degrees here with us.
Right.
Not here. Yeah. Here, I mean our system. Yeah. It's 32 degrees there, too. You just don't say that. I'm sorry.
Exactly, yeah. So I think the biggest thing where I'm living now is the duration of the winters. But no, we don't, to kind of kill the myth, we don't hole up. We go out, we go to work, we go to school. We kind of joke and tease about our American friends who get a skiff of ice or a skiff of snow, and the buses stop running and nobody goes to school. It's a snow day, and I mean that's. I guess we're just more used to it, so we don't. There's almost no circumstances where we cancel work or we cancel school for the kids or anything like that. Like, it's every day. You go out, you live your life. We go to restaurants, we go to plays, we go to the movie theater, we go shopping, we do all those things. What we don't do when it's minus 47 and blizzarding is we don't go tobogganing on those days. We don't, obviously there's no sports outside in those days. We have a lot of covered stadiums for football, or like our National Football League. It's not called the NFL, it's called the CFL, Canadian Football League. Right. But we have lots of covered stadiums for those things. But we don't play those sports in January, February when it's coldest. Those kind of finish up October, mid-November, that kind of thing. So, and obviously there's no soccer and baseball, the outside kinds of things. But no, we don't stop living. We spend more time indoors, obviously, but it's not us living in a hole in the ground as some people think. There's no igloos, there's no moose walking down the street. There's no grizzly bears coming to raid the garbage can or anything like that.
No, but I mean, okay, you may have answered my question then. Okay. I mean, so in other words, no, Alex, I write whether it's warm or cold. I'm not cold.
We live our lives. But to your point about informing the books, the work, absolutely. I think my second book that I put out is called THALO BLUE. Mm-hmm. It's probably one of my more complex horror, suspense, paranormal thriller books. It's I'm quite proud of it, but it is quite informed by the weather, and it has plot points that kind of hinge on that. It opens with a young man who he's facing some challenges, and he's kind of reached bottom. He's depressed, and he's home alone, and it's the middle of winter, and a thief breaks into his house, a robber or a burglar breaks into his house, and this starts the whole plot in motion. And the weather is very front and center in that beginning part of the book, because it has a lot to do with the coldness and the iciness that kind of associate with his character and where he's gone in his life. So yeah, it does play a part in the writing.
You may have read, or you said you may read, my first book, Pilot's Cross. It was definitely affected by the weather for me, because it was inspired, it was a true story, based on a true story. It's inspired by when I moved from Oklahoma, place, of very little snow, more ice than snow in the winter. And I moved to Nebraska, southeast Nebraska, to a very small town where I experienced several feet of snow my first winter there, and it was a small town, so they didn't have a lot of snow removal stuff. Basically, you walked or you were stuck for weeks, a couple of weeks sometimes.
Right.
See, that's what I envisioned would happen to you, but of course, you're not in a small town anyway. But anyway, but that book, the weather became a character because I was so trying to paint John Pilot as being an outsider in so many ways, and I was also painting all of these different villains that had aligned against him, and one of those villains is actually the cold and the weather, which he had no real understanding of.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a huge X-Files fan, by the way, and I'm enjoying this series, and sometime we got to talk about that. But the second movie, I Want to Believe, which filmed in Canada, by the way, most people don't like it. I have a soft spot for it because I love the X-Files, but also because I loved how the weather played a part as a character in that book or that movie. So anyway, that's what I was getting at, and I knew from THALO BLUE as well because I have read that, and it's been a long time. It's I think it was when we first met. I picked that up.
Okay.
I think I probably still owe you a review. I'm going to read it again. That's what I mean. but so that's what I was trying to get at too, was the writer side of it, but then the character side of it, and you answered that. You went right into that question. So
can I say one thing about this?
You can get a word in edgewise. Go ahead.
Oh no, I didn't mean that. I just before I forget. So a lot of culture and a lot of entertainment that Canadians get is obviously American. Hollywood movies and those kinds of things. That informs a lot of what we do.
I'm sorry.
Literature is one of those things that there's a very definite Canadian identity. And when I go to American literature, not my friends and not the indie authors in the indie community of writers, but when I go to, say, classic literature, I go to things like Ernest Hemingway, like The Old Man and the Sea, because that's a very man versus nature, man versus himself kind of a tale, right?
Right.
That's just one example, but that's probably one of the best and clearest for me at the moment. Canadian literature is very similar to that, and that's probably why I identify with that book and books like that in the American canon of literature so much, is because Canadian writers traditionally talk about weather and how it does exactly what you were talking about with John Pilot, is it becomes a character and it becomes an antagonist, an actual set of elements that force the character into doing or not doing certain things. It becomes very real, and that's a very classic tenet of Canadian literature. And so when I wrote THALO BLUE, for example, and other things, other novellas and other stories, I'm just informed by that. That's when I went to high school, I read those Canadian authors, and so those are the man versus nature, man versus himself kinds of ideas that were ingrained in me. So obviously I'm going to do that kind of thing as well. But I've read enough American literature and seen enough Hollywood movies that I kind of have this new spin on it. And it appeals to a lot of American readers because it's maybe more exciting than some of those classic Canadian things where it literally is our main character sitting in a hut 200 years ago in the Canadian wilderness and fighting against the elements, which can be seen as a bit of a drag sometimes. So there's more things to it than that, but I think that's where some of my history comes in and kind of informs that man versus nature, man versus himself kind of thinking.
It's such a great rich vein to mine if you can do it right, which you do. And hey, Jason, I knew this would happen when you agreed to come on. We're out of time, but we're not out of topics. Can I get you back?
I would love to. That would be fantastic.
Okay, great. How do people find more about you and your work?
Well, the mothership is www.thefarthestreaches.com. You can find links to every place on there. You can find links to Twitter and Facebook and Amazon and Barnes & Noble and the the Apple iBook store. Yeah, find me. Do a Google search for Jason McIntyre and just find me and reach out.
And we'll put some links in the show notes as well. Jason, a pleasure, and we're just going to have you right back. So stay tuned for more Jason McIntyre. You've been listening to Mysterious Goings On, and until next time, keep reading.
Get a credit card that gives you what you need now. A low interest rate on everyday purchases and a place to transfer high interest rate balances. The PenFed Gold Contactless Card is our lowest interest rate credit card. You can even earn a $100 statement credit when you spend $1,500 in the first 90 days. Join PenFed, and together we can help you keep more of what's yours. Visit penfed.org/goldcard. To receive any advertised product, you must become a member of PenFed, insured by NCUA. A little flexibility can go a long way. By refinancing your new or used auto loan with PenFed, you can lower your monthly payments for more flexibility in your budget. You can even schedule your first payment for up to 60 days from the date of your refinance. Calculate how much you could save at penfed.org/auto-refi or call 1-800-247-5626 to apply. Membership is open to everyone. To receive any advertised product, you must become a member of PenFed, insured by NCUA.